This is the Microsoft Surface Book 2. Now, you might be looking at it and wondering, hey, what's different? It looks pretty much the same, and you would be largely right. Microsoft says that the internals are the big focus in the Surface Book 2, but there is one exception you might have noticed if you have a keen eye, and that is the new 15-inch model. Yes, this Surface Book here is a little bit bigger than the ones you might have seen in the past. However, the Book 2 is also keeping the classic massive price tag. This one is $3,200. That gets you an 8th gen quad-core processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1 terabyte hard drive. That's a lot of money. So is it worth it? Let's take a look. Now, as mentioned, the externals of the Surface Book 2 are pretty much the same as before. Microsoft says there's a little difference here and there. Honestly, we've had a hard time finding any of those differences. Now, with the larger 15-inch model, which is new, you do get a system that, of course, is going to have a bigger display and a bigger body to go with it. However, you'll be happy to know this is actually the same thickness as the 13-inch Surface Book and Surface Book 2. So you're not getting anything larger in that dimension by going with the larger screen size, and that's really nice. Another big positive of the 15-inch model is the weight. It starts at 4.2 pounds, and that's just about a pound more than the 13-inch model. That's also going to be lighter than any competing 15-inch 2-in-1s like the HP Spectre X360 15-inch. That weighs about 4.5 pounds. So overall, it is very thin and light for what it is. Now, the design does have a little bit of a limitation on ports. You will see that there's 2 USB Type A's over here, and 1 USB Type C here. Yes, I did say USB Type C. Finally, Microsoft has decided to allow USB Type C on one of its devices, which is really nice. You can't actually charge with that, although it does by default come with the Microsoft Surface Connect charger. However, otherwise that's it. Well, SD card, headphone jack, those things you probably expect. The headphone jack is sort of in an awkward place as well. You will notice it's up here. Great if you're using it as a tablet, not so great if you're using it as a laptop. Now, overall, while that doesn't seem like a lot of selection, I will say that compared to other 15-inch 2-in-1s, it's about par for the course. If you're going to get something that is as thin and light as this with a 15-inch screen, you probably do have to sacrifice on the ports. Now, also returning from the original model is the dynamic fulcrum hinge, which is this kind of strange looking hinge that is the defining characteristic of the Book line. It means that the device does not close entirely. And that's a little weird, and it's still a little bit of an issue. You get some dirt in there, it can make the screen a little bit easier to smudge up. However, the reason for that is that you can completely detach this display portion and use it as a tablet. You just have to press a button, and it usually takes about 2 or 3 seconds, then it becomes available to take off. Now, this of course is not the only detachable 2-in-1 system in the world, but what is a little bit unique here is there's a lot of power between these two different segments. This has the GPU in it, and this has the CPU in it. There's also batteries in each one. So apparently, this hinge and the connectors here are required to keep those in communication. When you do take the tablet portion off, even on this 15-inch model, it's shockingly light. You can easily move it about from hand to hand, no problem. Now, with a 15-inch screen, it is going to be a little unwieldy at times, but it's actually pretty easy to just sort of hold like this and tap with your other hand. And compared to other systems that are 15-inch 2-in-1s that tend to have the folding hinge style where you can't take the base off, it's a big improvement. Those are going to be way heavier, and they get really too heavy to use for very long as a tablet. Now, another great thing about tablet use with the Surface Book 2 is the maturity of Windows 10 as a tablet operating system. There's been a lot of improvements even since Windows 10 was released, so it feels really good to just sort of tap around and use the operating system. You can easily look at your notifications, you can easily launch apps, you can easily take notes. Now, we also really like the Surface Pen. It is unfortunately a $100 additional accessory. It doesn't come bundled with the Book 2, which is a bit of a missed opportunity there. But otherwise, it's extremely responsive. It works well with a wide variety of apps and with the Windows 10 operating system, and the pen itself feels really nice. It's shaped like a pin. It is the size of a pin. It's the weight of a pin. It even has the little clip on it. It has an eraser function, and it's extremely responsive when you put it to the screen. So all in all, it's a great little device. And if you want to handwrite notes, Windows 10 and the Surface Book 2 is a great place to do it. Now while you're tapping and writing, you're of course going to notice the display, which is excellent. It's a 3240 by 2160 3x2 touchscreen, and it looks great. It has good color gamut, it has excellent contrast, one of the best contrast ratios we've seen on any laptop. The colors are not the most accurate, but they are at least vibrant. They actually sort of overshoot in the vibrancy, so they can look a little neon sometimes. However, aside from that little quibble, which actually some people might sort of prefer to a more realistic image, it's an excellent screen, one of the best we've seen on any laptop or Tier 1 yet. Now, what about the keyboard? Well, the keyboard's also really good. There's plenty of travel here, and it's a nice, spacious layout. The only thing you might want to note is that there's no numpad. We personally prefer 15-inch laptops that ditch the numpad, but if that's something you need, well, unfortunately it's not here. Also, the touchpad is quite good. It could be a little bigger. You can see there's plenty of extra space around that touchpad. So Microsoft could have given us a bit more room to wag our fingers there, but it is otherwise very responsive and all the touch gestures work very well. Now Microsoft said the real upgrades are inside, and there are a lot of upgrades inside. We're jumping to the 8th generation Intel quad-core processors here. That's the new ones that only have a 15-watt thermal design power, which means they're relatively efficient despite the fact they have 4 cores. And they just blaze through most of our benchmarks. This also has 16 gigabytes of RAM in this configuration. It's a base of 8 gigabytes of RAM. And this has the 1 terabyte hard drive. Now, when we tested that hard drive, it was incredibly quick. It got up to 2.8 gigabytes per second transfer speed on read functions. So that's about the fastest we've seen. The only thing that's really going to be in league with that is a MacBook Pro 15. Another really interesting piece of the puzzle here is upgrading the graphics. You have GTX 1060 graphics in the 15-inch model. The 13-inch Book 2 has GTX 1050. Now, that doesn't mean this is necessarily a gaming rig. It's really more focused on applications that have GPU compute functions in them. So it's really more for work. But you can run some games on it, and they run pretty well. You can run Civilization 6. You can even run Deus Ex Mankind Divided at high settings, 1080p, and get a decent frame rate. The one limitation though with games, and you really are going to want to be aware of this, is that the way the drivers work on the Surface Book 2 doesn't allow the automatic updates through Nvidia that you might expect. They're actually sort of tweaked to work with the Surface Book 2 because it is a rather unique device, what with the tablet coming off and everything. So that could be a little bit of a problem down the road. You might not notice all the performance upgrades you normally would notice from new driver releases over time. So don't get this if you're a gamer, but otherwise that GTX 1060, it's a really nice performance upgrade, and you're definitely going to see it in your GPU compute compatible application. So with this big screen and all that performance, you might be thinking, gee, what is the battery going to do? Well, actually the battery life is absolutely fantastic. You're looking at 15 hours plus in our web browsing benchmark, which actually loops through a script of web pages to simulate real-world use. And that pretty much blows away anything else we've tested recently. Probably the closest recent competitor was the Surface Book with the performance base, which also had a very large battery and good battery life. And it is the size of the battery that really drives that point home. This has a 90 watt-hour battery. Now the battery is split between the tablet and the base. So the tablet portion has about 23 watt hours, the base has about 67 watt hours. So about 2/3 the base, 1/3 the tablet. We expect that overall your usage will reflect that. If you just use the tablet, you're probably going to get about 1/3 of the battery life as you would if you use the base with it as well. Maybe a little better because the tablet portion doesn't include the graphics in it. That's in the base. And that's a little power that you wouldn't be consuming if you had the tablet off entirely. Now the verdict here is really quite simple. The Surface Book 2 is incredible in pretty much every single way that you can imagine a laptop or two-in-one being. there's no real weakness here. It does everything. It has a great display, awesome battery life, a fast processor with fast graphics, and potentially gobs of solid-state storage, which is extremely fast solid-state storage at that. The only issue is the price. Well, it's very expensive. $3,200 is a lot for a laptop, and even if you get the base entry-level model of the 15-inch Surface Book 2, that one is $2,500. It's still a lot of money. But if you've got that much to spend and you really do want the very best 2-in-1 that's out there right now, this is it.